Are you finding it more difficult to get into a relationship now that you're spiritually awake? If you're wanting to know what people do once they start manifesting their specific person or anything else that is causing their own unintentional delay, you're going to want to stay tuned. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another rousing episode of Spilling the Tea Tuesday. My name is Flossie, and I consider myself to be the funniest, wittiest mindset coach, as well as your OG Hype You Up Rampage Queen here on YouTube. If you want one-on-one coaching with me, links are going to be in the description box below. I know I'm interrupting the video, but it's because I have an announcement, yo. So, Nikki and I are going to do number one, an SP crash course that for the first 5 people, it is $149. The next 10 people, it's $199, and then after that, it's $249. But this crash course for getting SP for summer has something really cool, and that is it will include a 3-month accountability workbook where you basically check in with yourself every day, rate your mental diet, how you're doing. It gives you space to write FU letters, command letters, and all that good stuff. All you have to do is pay shipping for the book itself, but other than that, that's what the course pricing is. If you want the book by itself, it's $39 plus whatever shipping is to get it to you. Also, Nikki and I are offering something a little different. We haven't done this before, but we will literally have packages to where you can have an all-inclusive pass to our previously recorded crash courses. So for $125 a month, you can access all of our previous crash courses and challenges. It's like 13 different things in there. For $125 a month, you can cancel anytime. Of course, when you cancel, your access to all of our courses that are going to be in there ends. If you want to have an all-access pass and get the courses and group coaching, that's $149 a month, where Nikki and I go live twice a month. If you want group coaching by itself, it's $49. And plus, Nikki has the manifest for me all on the website. So I'll include the links below, but you're going to want to check that out because we've never had access to all of our previous crash courses and challenges before, and now you can get it all for a monthly subscription if you want. So back to the video, yo. So before I get to the topic at hand, you know I've got to do my calendar, especially since I've missed a few days, because I just have. This says, change your damn clocks already. Well, we already know about that. That's like long gone, depending on where you are, because some places don't change their clocks. This says, don't be shitty. Why be shitty when you're the operative power of your reality and you can legit have anything that you want? Super fucking duper, it certainly is, because why? I'm a master of manifesting and I legit get my shiznit, yo. Why? Because the world is your fucking oyster. Hooray. It's my fucking oyster up in my reality, just like it's yours and yours. Hello. It says, let's fucking do this, as in get our shiznit by affirming, persisting, and having our dream life. This says, and suddenly everyone's fucking Irish. Not important to me, although there are Irish individuals in my family. Beer should not be fucking green. I would agree with that. Personally, but don't care. This says, fresh out of fucks. There should be more that says about the 3D, because we don't care about the 3D hood shit. It just goes where? Straight into the trash where it belongs. This says, we're taking some deep fucking breaths. Yes, if the 3D is reflecting back to you some shiznit that is not in line with your manifestation, take some deep breaths. Use your tools of the FU letter, command letter, and the love letter, EFT tapping, affirming and persisting, rampaging, and move past it. Bring on the damn allergies. Not if you manifest it away. Keep calm and give no fucks about the 3D. Hell yes. It's a pollen nightmare only if you manifest it that way or manifest yourself having allergies. So let's get to the topic at hand. So the title that I was making this video was basically, I think I'm going to call it something like manifesting your SP, or, you know, while awake or while asleep or whatever. But anyway, to get to the point that I wanted to make, I've had multiple conversations with clients recently where this topic has come up. How difficult it seems for, you know, them to get in the relationship that they want now that they are spiritually awake, aka know that they're a manifestor and they're manifesting. And there's some key differences that I think that people are not aware of when they become a manifestor. So once you learn about manifesting, because you cannot not manifest, you've always been manifesting, but when you were spiritually asleep, you didn't know about it. So you weren't affirming and persisting purposely for anything. You were just going along about your lives, thinking about the things that you wanted. And depending what, assumptions that you had at those times were how your 3D realities unfolded for you. And now that we know about manifesting, and we know that our thoughts ultimately create our dominant thoughts on a topic or assumptions that we choose to have are ultimately what we experience in our 3D reality, because our dominant thoughts go to our subconscious, that gets mirrored back to us, reflected back to us, and our 3D reality conforms. Having said that, when people realize that their thoughts do create and that it is their dominant thought, there's a few things that end up happening. One is they get hyper focused on what they're thinking, and they often get hyper focused if they're having a negative thought. And because they know that their thoughts will ultimately manifest when it's the dominant thought on the topic, they get too caught up on, well, I'm thinking negatively and that means I'm going to experience this. And that assumption that they have, if it's strong enough, oh, I'm thinking negative thoughts and I'm going to experience this, that assumption can be what causes those things to manifest or causes a delay. So we're no longer going with the flow. There used to be, when we were spiritually asleep, and I say used to be because my life isn't like this anymore, not to the same extent anyway, where, you remember back in the old days when you were spiritually asleep and, somebody would be interested in you or you would be interested in somebody and you would go ahead and flirt away and you'd be having a great time, whether it be at school or at the club or with a group of friends. And this person seems to be interested in you and you're all excited about it. And you're legit telling your friends, oh, I'm so into this person. I can tell that they like me. I'm thinking that they're probably going to ask me out. And you're thinking about them asking you out or calling you, messaging you, texting you. And in your mind, you're forming these pictures of you getting these text messages or being asked out or being together. And, parts of our mind do think with images, our subconscious and whatnot, thinks and images. And so we're just basically having these visualizations to a certain extent, because we do often form pictures when we think, when we realize it or not. But we're having pictures ultimately of us having what we want, because we're being hopeful about it. We're being upbeat about it. We're being positive about it. And that's what ultimately would be mirrored back to us, reflected back to us. This person would pursue us. They would be doing all these things. We'd be in a good mood. We would talking happily about this. We weren't worried about having negative thoughts, because if we thought something negative, a lot of times we just automatically put it in the trash where it belonged. We didn't get caught up on our negative thinking. We didn't get hyper focused on every single thought. We were just going with the flow and enjoying life. And we're thinking about this person. We're thinking that they're going to text us, but we didn't cease our life. And we didn't just sit on the couch all day waiting for a text like we do when we're manifesting, or some people do. And I try to discourage that. So, when we were spiritually asleep, we didn't worry about everything and we weren't concerned about every thought, and we just went on living our life. We took inspired action if we felt inspired. We would reach out if we wanted to reach out. We weren't second guessing ourselves all the time, wondering if we're doing the right thing or not. We just did things that we felt like doing, that we felt inspired to do. And we would just actually, for the most part, think positively about it. Even if we had some negative thinking oh, maybe they won't answer me, another part of our mind would be of course they're going to. They were so interested in us, they were flirting with us, or they were acting this way. And we would just keep reaffirming that we were going to have what we wanted. And a lot of times we did that naturally. Now, if you were the opposite of that, because maybe you're just a pessimistic, more negative person, and you thought negative thoughts, then you got those negative results. But I'm just saying, on average, people who don't really necessarily have tons and tons and tons of negative assumptions, they were just going with the flow. Just like if you applied for a job, you would see yourself working there and you would think how it would be to work there and maybe where you would sit or how you and your friend would hang out because your friend works there, and you would think positively about it. You would go to your interview in a maybe nervous but reasonable mood, and you would take whatever inspired action to follow up, and lo and behold, you'd get the job, and you'd think, yay me, of course I do, because I quite frequently get jobs that I apply for. And you would just automatically think those type of things. And the same with money. If you wanted money, you would be thinking about money, you'd be thinking about having that money, and then maybe a family member would give you a bunch of money as a gift, or maybe you would, win a bit of money, or go to the casino and win some money, or get a bonus from your job, and you would be like, yeah, I got some extra money, or, I got a job that's paying me more money, whatever that it is. But you weren't consumed with your negative thoughts, or worrying about your negative thoughts, or worrying when things were going to end when they were going to actually happen for you. You just allowed it to unfold. Why? Because the process felt more natural, because you weren't necessarily consumed with every thought that you were going to have. And so I think that when people are spiritually asleep, they're just not, they were not focusing on the negative thoughts, the negative thinking, or totally focusing on the negative. They're just literally allowing themselves to go through the process while they're living their life. And a lot of times we lose that when we're consciously manifesting. And then because we're consciously manifesting, one of the other big things that I see people doing, and I've done it, many people have done it, many people still do it, and this comes up over the phone. It was actually one of the purposes for this video was from a recent client call where a client was getting movement. They were getting movement on their manifestation, but because it wasn't unfolding completely, or it wasn't unfolding in a way that was, it wasn't that the movement was negative, but the movement wasn't for, like I said, the whole thing. They wanted to look at that as, well, I didn't get my manifestation. Well, no, you got movement towards your manifestation, and that could have been part of the unfolding process. So, in the 3D reality, in the past, if we had a hiccup in our relationship, or a hiccup financially, or with work, and we were taking inspired action in order to have our 3D reality be different. Now, remember, we were spiritually asleep. We would just have a thought that would pop in our head of doing X, Y, Z. We would do it. We would be hopeful about a turnaround of whatever our situation is, that our relationship would get better, or that we'd have improvement at the job, or we'd, get a better financial situation. We would, if we got some movement on that, if things started moving, we didn't necessarily freak out if it wasn't all at once, in other words. So like, let's say, for example, when we were spiritually asleep, if we had problems with a partner, that maybe the partner came forth, contacted us, and talked a little bit about the relationship, but it wasn't like we weren't getting everything. The partner was unsure. At the time, we would look at things like, well, at least we're talking, at least things are moving forward. And we would try to remain hopeful, like what I would call hopeful. And we weren't necessarily freaking out if the person didn't fully come back all immediately, at least not as much as we do now. I'm comparing like how we are now compared to how we were. And if you are questioning the accuracy, maybe do some reflecting on your past relationships, or how you've seen things happen in your reality for these different topics, and try to think like, what was I thinking back then? What was I thinking, years ago in a situation? Was I like hopeful, or was I extremely negative? Was I sitting there worrying about every negative thought, or was I just trying to push forward and do things as I, felt inspired to do them, and allowed things to, to kind of come to fruition? Nowadays, when people are spiritually awake and they're manifesting, they're not always recognizing movement for what it is, that they're actually getting movement. If your manifestation doesn't come all at once and it comes in bits, I wouldn't necessarily like freak out and throw the manifestation in the trash, because your manifestation doesn't belong in the trash. Only your negative thinking and the old story goes in the trash. If your SP comes forth and they're not 100%, I want to be fully back together with you, let's fix this and move forward. If they come forth and they're like, let's hang out for a bit, or if they come forth and maybe they're just kind of like, is there anything to eat? Or, they stop to pick something up from your house and they decide to visit for a little while, do not freak out just because the manifestation is not fully there. You will find that you'll get that manifestation quicker if, instead of second guessing every single thing that's happening, if you just go more with the flow, and allow things to unfold, because things are still unfolding based on your dominant thoughts and assumptions. Let's look at two different scenarios. Let's say that in scenario A, both of these scenarios, people are spiritually awake, right? They already know about manifesting. Let's say that in situation A, where, I guess we'll make it the same situation. SP comes forth, they want to pick up something from your place because, they left something there. While they're there, they have a little conversation, they share a snack. Maybe they are visiting, they're joking, not saying they want to be with you, still saying, that they don't want the relationship, but they're being friendly towards you, and, maybe kiss you on the cheek or whatever. Now, person A, who's spiritually awake, could be freaking out, could be demanding to know about the relationship, could be like telling themselves they're not getting their manifestation, that shit's not happening, that why isn't it here? And like keeps reaffirming that they don't have what they want and literally throws that movement in the trash. While the other person recognizes it as movement. They're like, you know, SP didn't really need to come over here to get that. Or they could have just got it and literally had me hand it to them and not continued to have a conversation, enjoy some food with me. Maybe they said a couple things that are a little bit old story, but they were also friendly. They gave me a kiss on the cheek, you know, told me that they missed me, that they still love me, blah, blah, blah. But I heard a little bit of old story or something like that. So person A has reaffirmed what they don't want, and they've stayed focused in the old story, and they're not recognizing their movement. Person B is saying, okay, like this didn't go what I wanted. They're saying some shit from the old story, but I'm not going to really worry about that. I'm going to firm and persist. Perhaps I'm going to write a FU letter about some of what happened, but I'm going to recognize that what I'm doing is working because SP came forth, didn't have to stay, didn't really need to come for this item. Like that was movement. And I'm going to recognize it as movement. I'm going to recognize that what I'm doing is working, and I'm still going to keep going, but I'm going to write a FU letter to deal with how I'm feeling about how it went. And then I'm going to write that command letter or that love letter to like get back in my power and to help further convince my mind that what I want, as far as I'm concerned, could possibly already be true. So it can go to the subconscious to manifest. So which person do you think is going to get their shit faster? The person who chose not to react, remain hopeful, go with the flow, continuing to live their life, is using the tools and just maybe not thrilled about it, but persisting forward and not getting all worked up and not reacting in the 3D, or the person that's reacting in the 3D, period? I think the answer is pretty clear. And so when we were spiritually asleep, we weren't hyper-focusing on all of our thoughts. We weren't hyper-focusing necessarily on the 3D most of the time. And I'm not talking about people that, necessarily are anxious or obsessive. I'm talking about your average person. Most of us did not necessarily overly obsess about everything going on in the 3D. We kind of went with the flow. We took inspired action, and we were hopeful about whatever it is that we wanted. And we thought thoughts as if we had what we wanted, but we didn't recognize we were doing so. We didn't recognize that we were manifesting. Now that we're spiritually awake, we hyper-focus on every single thought. We think that every thought that we have needs to be about what we're manifesting. We worry about every negative thought that we have, telling ourselves that if we have this negative thought, that that's what we're going to get. We're constantly reaffirming that we don't have what we want. We're constantly looking for our manifestation under every rock, like looking for confirmation. And then we react when we start getting movement or that we're not getting movement. So I think that you can see the difference here. And some of the things to do is just deal with your anxiety about manifesting. You can check out my video that I have here about like anxiety and manifestation that can tell you some tips to do on how to like more easily navigate how you might feel when the manifestation's in the unfolding process. But what I say at the end of the day, try to go more with the flow, because when you do, the process just seems easier for you. I've started noticing this like in my manifestation journey myself. And so like I would try to catch myself. If I wanted to react to something, I would try to catch myself more. I would try to do some revising on the spot, or maybe some affirming in my head if my 3D wasn't, 100% being what I wanted. And I think that just have to recognize it. If you're having a negative thought, just don't like sit there and become where you're going to put up a tent and stay. You just need to put that negative thought in the trash and keep moving forward, because you can literally do have anything that you want, and your 3D reality is going to conform, but you have to change your dominant thought. So stop reaffirming to yourself that you don't have what you want. Stop sitting in hopelessness and getting back to being hopeful. Stop, being in victim mentality and get back to being, I'm going to push through, I'm going to persevere, because maybe they didn't fully know, or we didn't fully know that we were going to literally be able to have what we wanted when we were spiritually asleep, but we weren't in victim mentality as much as we get now as conscious manifesting. And I think if you examine your life or the life of others, you would probably recognize some of what I'm saying is what you have witnessed as well, or maybe you notice yourself in your own journey with what I'm describing. So I'm hoping that this video has been helpful to you. You can avoid making these, I don't necessarily want to look at things as mistakes, but avoid these pitfalls and avoid unintentional delays on yourself by focusing on what you want and recognizing things for what they are. If your manifestation doesn't unfold all immediately, don't choose to care about that. You can choose to care about what you want, But I wouldn't put my focus there. I really wouldn't, because your manifestation is unfolding. It's just in your mind, you have it. And, you know, in the 3D, it doesn't reflect that. And we can get impatient. I get it. But we seem to be more patient when we were spiritually asleep, going with the flow, remaining hopeful, taking inspired action. Try to return to more to that. Anyway, drop any comments, questions, or concerns below, because you know I love them. Check them out. And as usual, I'll talk to you later. Bye.